People told me that being a writer was too difficult and that I probably shouldn't do it, but I'm here because I decided to tell my story, and I have other stories of other people that I want to make sure get out. So that's what I'm focused on.
Hey everyone, it's Neffy Anderson here with a brand new episode of The Path Less Traveled, a web series spotlighting millennial entrepreneurs who successfully turn their passions into lucrative careers. Today's guest is writer, editor, and digital strategist, Jonathan Jackson. Everybody give a round of applause for Jonathan Jackson. Yes. Show this man some love, put some respect on his name. Now let me give you the rundown on Jonathan, okay? Jonathan is most known for being the co-founder and head of corporate branding for Blavity, a digital destination for and by Black millennials, covering everything from pop culture to politics. Now, what makes Blavity so special is its commitment to covering stories that are important to the Black community that otherwise go unnoticed or uncovered by mainstream media outlets. Jonathan and Blavity together have been featured in outlets such as Forbes, the Huffington Post, USA Today, LinkedIn, and now the Path Less Travel series. One time for Jonathan, everybody. He's pretty amazing. So Jonathan, thank you so much for being here and for allowing me to interview you and being the first guest for a live taping.
This is dope. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so blessed. So just like in church, when the pastor says, take a moment to take out your Bible, take a moment to take out your phone, okay? And when you tweet, make sure you tweet using the hashtag TPLT series. So what's the hashtag? TPLT series. I like y'all. Y'all smart, y'all loyal, all that good stuff. All right, so it's gonna get deep really quickly. I'm like, Jonathan, I usually don't have like cue cards or anything, but there's a lot to cover. There's so many questions I want to ask him. I'm like truly a fan, so I'm gonna try to like breeze through this, and then he has something special for us at the end. So here we go. You ready?
Let's do it.
You scared?
Never.
You should be. So let's kind of like take it from the beginning. Talk to me about how you guys came up with the name Blavity. Like, what does it mean, and where did the idea for the company come from?
Yeah, so my co-founders, Morgan, Jeff, and Aaron, and myself all went to Washington University in St. Louis. And the campus demographics are around like 4 to 6% Black. They say 6% because they just add in the grad school to like make it seem more Black, but it's not. So in any event, there was only a few spaces on campus where Black people could gather. And one of those was an actual lunch table when we were there. And the term we used was Blavity, right? So it's the word black and gravity. So it is a noun in the sense that when you see someone Black, there's a feeling attached to it, but it's also a verb, right? So it's that head nod you give when you're in Home Depot with somebody and you're like, yeah, you're buying supplies too. Dope, right? It's just that feeling. And so that sustained us when we were on campus, but when we left, and this was led by Morgan, we didn't really have a space that we felt like was sharing our voices, and everything was disparate. So we were all scattered, but Morgan brought us together around this idea, and we're here about 2.5 years later.
I love it. So you mentioned that there are 4 co-founders,
Yeah.
you being one of them.
Yep.
Talk to me about each of your roles as it pertains to Blavity.
Yeah, so Morgan's the founder and CEO, right? So she does everything, her hands everywhere, and she is responsible for company vision and setting that. Aaron, who's our COO, is involved in anything that's revenue generation, right? So that's big deals, partnerships, running the sales team, looking around new clients we should go after. Then you have Jeff, our CTO. So we've always had a tech stack, so we've had engineers since the beginning, and he is sort of the tech whiz and genius behind that. And my role is sort of interspersed, right? So corporate brand is sort of a jargony way to say that I look to make sure we are in the spaces and places that we need to be. So the industries need to know about us. If there's foundations or companies, how can we work with them? And what does our story look like? And are we delivering on that promise for our community, but also anyone else we work with?
I love it. So you mentioned that you guys recently celebrated your 2-year anniversary.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
But you also quit your 9 to 5. You said peace out.
I did.
You were at LinkedIn for about 3 years in a variety of roles. So talk to me about how you made the decision to leave the company and what did you do in order to transition out?
Yeah, so I think my decision was predicated on a few things, right? Like I loved my job, and I think the prevailing notion is that people are like, yo, I cannot wait for the day I leave. Like I want to hit my boss with like an inanimate object. I didn't have any of that. Like I really enjoy what I did and who I worked with. But the reality is when you want to do something you love, you have to give up a lot of things you like. And I believe like for me, I was always on that path. It got accelerated because Blavity's growth never slowed down. And as much as I wanted to do both, I wasn't always giving what I should have given to the thing that I was around for the beginning of. And so I made sure that everyone I was working with knew the things I was involved with outside of that, which made the transition a little easier.
I just want to know if you guys caught that quote though. Right? You got it. They're like, okay, right? In order to do what you love, you got to give them what you like. I like that. DJ Khaled voice. All right, so talk to me about your writing, right? Because I know that in the very, very beginning stages when Morgan first told you about this idea, she was like, I want you to come on board. You're like, yo, how can I help? And she was like, you can start by, giving us some pieces. So talk to me about your love of writing. Like, where did it come from?
Yeah.
Has it always been a passion of yours?
Yeah, so it started really young, right? And I think now I'm able to call myself a writer. I didn't do that until like a year and a half ago. So when I was really, really little, my mom used to tell me the story about, she used to read me Peter Rabbit before bed. And I used to have her read me like the same story over and over again. And then on the way to school, I'd be in the back seat and I'd have my Peter Rabbit book and I would open the pages before I knew how to read and just retell the story. So my brother's friends would be in the car like, yo, is your little brother actually reading? He's like 4. And I'd be like, I don't know what I'm doing. But that was like part of my beginning, right? So the love of diction and story and how you can actually take an idea and using words like paint. And that's how I like to create. And so from there, I've always had this voice, but there have been times where I've held it, I've shielded it. But more recently with Blavity, it pushed me way out of my comfort zone because I had to start telling that story broadly. And so it's been a progression from there, but I've always had it. I just recently decided to actually dedicate time and effort to it in a meaningful way.
So what would you say were some of the opportunities that you created for yourself that led to a big break in your career and or Blavity? Yeah,
so there's a couple. My 4th week at LinkedIn, I was in a room with a cohort. I was in a rotational program. We were asking questions of the SVP, who's this great dude. And I looked around the room and I, per usual, was I think I was the only black person in there. And then we were talking about like talent and how important it was. And I raised my hand and he was like, Jonathan, do you have a question? I was like, yeah, I'm just curious like why we don't recruit below the Mason-Dixon line. And the whole room was just like, I was like, to be more specific, why we don't go to colleges with higher demographics of black people if we believe talent is like the future. And obviously no one wanted to involve in that conversation. I felt like if I was to get fired, I still had Southwest miles, so it wouldn't be that bad. But for me, like asking questions like that allowed me to differentiate myself. Not because I wanted to be disruptive, I just felt like I had questions that no one else could answer. So my ability to separate has been more about my curiosity than me naturally, being more talented or stronger or faster. It's been like I've dug into the questions that no one else can answer, and it's allowed me to create space for myself.
I love it. So what did you do to deliberately brand yourself? Would you say that was it, or is it something else? Because you're good at a lot of things. I'm not gonna embarrass you and go through your whole resume, but you did mad stuff, PR, all that.
Yeah, I think I'm really interested in people. So my thing is I try to lead with value first, and then from there it can be whatever it needs to be. So a lot of the opportunities I found were because I was curious about why not me. So like if I believe why shouldn't I do that, then my operating priorities shift to figure out what the space can look like. And the reality is with the internet, you can do a lot of information gathering in a very short period of time. So I do a lot of homework before I show up. And that allows me to walk into a room knowing who I'm talking to, and then furthermore knowing their priorities. And then if I'm really doing my work, knowing who they report to and their priorities. And so that makes a conversation a lot more streamlined.
What do you think is one thing that most people don't know about your journey to where you are today?
I was not always as personable as I appear to be. Like a lot of things growing up that most people don't know, but I had a speech impediment for a while. And so like T's and H's were not a thing. Like I had a really bad lisp and I didn't like speaking in front of people. I was really shy. Like I would never have done anything like this.
Well, you've come a long way, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. So that's definitely part of it. But I also think it's like not overnight. Like I've also been this type of person. I just haven't necessarily been doing it in front of a lot of people.
So what do you say you know now about the startup industry that you wish you knew when you first started?
I think you just have to have a healthy respect for understanding what you don't actually know, right? Like, so I knew I didn't know that much, but once you like really quit your job and you're like, I'm really gonna do this, you realize how much you actually don't know. So there's like a gap. And accepting that and like leaving your ego is probably the most important thing that I've done, because it's allowed me to make whatever mistakes I need to make and accelerate through them.
So I want to go back to you leaving your job. Talk to me about the steps that you took in order to make that happen. Successfully?
Yeah, it was pretty successful. Okay. I did a couple things, right? So the first one was when I got to LinkedIn, I knew a couple things, right? I wanted to make sure that one, regardless of my role, if my name came up in conversation, it was bulletproof. Like if someone had the same last name as me, there should be a conversation around like if we're related, and if so, that person should have the ability to like get access to things they wouldn't have, right? So I was very serious about my legacy coming in because I didn't know anyone. Right. And so that allowed me, I basically started meeting senior leaders very early because I wanted to know what their priorities were. Because I knew I wasn't gonna be there forever, but if I'm here and you give me access and there's all these free snacks, like I'm absolutely gonna do my due diligence. And so I created advocates and I found sponsors, like people that would talk about me when I wasn't in the room and show me opportunities that they felt I might not actually be ready for, but I could take advantage of. And so those people I carried with me when I left, and those are relationships I nurture because whatever they're doing is directly related to what I might want to do in the future or what I'm doing right now. So I think it's about involving people in your story before you need anything from them.
Right. So once you knew that, like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and take this step, like, did you start saving? When did you have that conversation with your boss?
Yeah. I mean, I saved from jump. Like, that's not really an option for me, right? Like, I was always like, well, if I'm making this, like, what would I need for this if everything went left? So that's not being a fatalist. I think that's being a realist. Like, things happen in life where you're required to be more liquid. And so I always knew that, and that's been like a historical pattern. So I needed that cushion anyway. But then when you're leaving, it's like, okay, what can I gather outside of the actual paycheck? And so I had that open conversation with my manager, right? He's very transparent, and I was like, hey, this is what I think I'm gonna do. What do you think? And he was like, go for it. And I was like, can we stay in touch? He was like, I'd be upset if we didn't. And so what I found is that people who are more senior in their careers, they've sold everything they need to sell, they've done everything they want. What they actually want is to see people that they can help with their actual influence, because that can sometimes give more purpose to their work than what they're just doing. So for me, I was like, hey, I'm doing this thing, it's in media, I think it's interesting, can I email you every 4 weeks with an update? And they were like, yes. And so that—
To your manager?
To my manager, to anyone senior I engaged with. And I was like, these relationships matter. How can I communicate that they matter regardless if I work in this organization or not?
So how did he take the news? So, okay, let's go back a little bit, because I want to marinate here a little bit, because I feel as though we have a lot of people in the audience and that are watching that are entrepreneurs, and they have 9 to 5s, and they may love them as you do, or they may not, and they're trying to figure out like next steps, like how do I, transition smoothly without burning bridges, into this next thing, this thing that I love.
Yeah.
So you had a conversation with him. How far out from you leaving?
I had a conversation around what I was thinking about just as far as my career was concerned, probably 3 months earlier, right? So I also made sure I had time with my manager. Like, that's my job. It's not my manager's job to schedule time with me. If I need resources from a person, I need to be on their calendar because it's about me. Like, my career is my own. I own that fully. So I was setting up time. And one of those conversations was like, hey, I'm thinking about this. And I had never really hid the fact that I was involved with Blavity. People knew it. People knew what was going on. And I was like, hey, I'm thinking about this. I think it's time. I think I'm in a space where if I don't do this now, I'm going to regret it. And I think that resonated. And as someone working in media, I think he understood that, and he wanted to support what I was doing because of the caliber of work I had been doing previously. So I think the other thing is you can't be whack at your job, your 9 to 5, and expect someone to support your 6 to 10, because they're not seeing you're not seeing your criteria, especially if you know you need something from them immediately, or you'd want something in the future. So I made sure to that point, like I was executing on everything I needed to. And that allowed me the space for people to be like, oh, absolutely, like, do your thing. You've been great here, but I bet you'll be better doing whatever it is in the future.
So what would you say was the last low point of your career, and how did you bounce back from that? It's a message that we want to get out, is that you are going to have low points. Not every day is going to be a bright day. Yeah. So, we fall down, but we get back up.
Yeah, I mean, I think I wouldn't call it like a low point. I think it's a battle, right? Like doing what I do now, like I can have a string of good calls, and then I can have something happen that like throws my day left. So I could tell you, like last week there were like 4 or 5 times where I was like, wow, this is like not that great. But then there were just as many times where I was like, it's lit. But I think if we're talking about like consistent low point, there was a period last year where I had gotten into a new role managing the influencer program, and I was way out of my depth. Like I did not think I could do it, period. Like I was like, this is too much pressure, like why am I here? So it was a deeper level of imposter syndrome than I'd ever experienced.
You're referencing LinkedIn's
LinkedIn's
program.
Yeah, so that's a program for 500 of the world's top thought leaders, and I was managing that and making sure that we were reaching the people we needed to and finding new voices to add to that. And that was just really, really weighty for me. And I felt like I didn't deserve it. And so a lot of the game was mental for me. Like the low point was that I cognitively was struggling to understand if I was good enough to execute on these specific things, and if I wasn't, like what would happen to me. And I think I was just blessed with a manager who refused to let me wallow in that. And they were like, you're great, otherwise I wouldn't have hired you. So do your job because you're the only one that can do it. And like someone talking to me like that didn't have to, I think, allowed me to continue to grow.
So what would you say currently is has been the most challenging part about being a part of Blavity?
Yeah, I think there's 2 things. The first one is the landscape, right? So if you look at media itself, it's volatile in general. Like media is difficult, it's busy, things are always changing, as you obviously know. And for us, we came in the game, if you will, with a clear declarative statement. We said we are focused on Black millennials between the ages of 18 to 30, period. And we believe that their stories matter, and they have $28 billion of buying power, and they're being critically underserved, and we're tired of it. And we keep making things that people keep taking, and we are not going to let that persist. When you make statements and people don't necessarily know who you are yet, it can obviously create friction, but it also creates ripples in the marketplace. And I think what's been most challenging for me is how to distill our vision into tactical things. Because I spend a lot of time thinking about where we need to go, where I need to speak, what I need to say. But the challenge is not everyone is at that space where they can digest the vision. Some people need like, what are you doing right now? Some people need, what does it look like? And other people really want to be involved. But in each case, it's actually pushed me to be a better communicator. I think the second thing is we've grown really fast. So if you're doing anything and you're growing, you have to think about, 1, the people on your team, 2, the type of leader you want to be for them, and what that looks like, and giving them what they need to be most successful.
Love it. So you guys have done a great job of bringing us fresh content. And there was like this thing that went viral. What was it? The Black Twitter Day?
Yeah. That was a smash.
That was pretty funny. Talk to me about your business model and your monetization channels.
Yeah, I mean, so like any good media company, right, we have advertisement, but we also do a lot of work directly with clients. So we've done sponsored content campaigns, we've done live event activations. We did Essence Fest for the 2nd time this year and did some cool stuff down there. And then we think about larger campaigns, right? So for us, the revenue has always been about how we can deliver something of value to our audience, and who could we work with to do that in a meaningful way that accomplishes their objectives. So I think for us, we've seen a lot of growth for a lot of different brands who are looking to reach our demographic, but are obviously fearful of not, one, appropriating, two, not just being flat out whack and having it be like not something people want to engage with, and what the future is. Because there's not as much data on our actual user base as there should be. Right. And so that's something I think about a lot, is like we deserve not only to be reached, but to be measured and indexed and have the same rich and robust data sets that you'd see for any other demographic of people out there.
Right, I love it. So it's time for us to actually take some questions from the demographic.
Let's do it.
So we posted a question on Instagram. So if you follow him, you already saw it. So let me just get my phone. Let's see what they got here. Okay, so Kayla Greaves wants to know, how do you prepare for a stressful day?
That's a great question. I think it starts at night. So I did this thing like 2-3 months ago where I started this gratitude journal, right? So the entire point of the journal is I just write bullet points of things I'm grateful for that day. And that sounds kind of meta, but I mean like literally, like if the D train is on time, I write it down. Like the D train was on time today, Google Docs didn't crash, the bodega made my sandwich with pepper jack, right? Like anything that I feel like can refresh my perspective, because I think your next day begins the way your night actually ends. And so I try to be really intentional about like, I don't want to go to sleep like other than thinking about the best things that actually took place. And so I think that starts in the morning. I have like quiet time where I will try to meditate, I'll try to pray, I'll try to like think. And also, if there are things that are really difficult, I try to get it done in front of the day, right? So Seth Godin calls it eat the frog. So do the hardest thing in the morning first, right, and then everything else can go from there.
I love it. I can dig it. I can dig it. So we have a question from Markwell Turner. I wonder who that is.
My man.
He would like to know, what song represents the current state of your life?
Oh man, this is tough. There's a couple. Current state. I think I'm on a gradient here. So I'm in between young MA. Ooh, right? Yeah. I'm there. But I think on the serious, on the right end of the side, I think I'm also between like Marvin Sapp Never Would Have Made It. Like I think that's the vacillation point, right? So I think on that end, like I'm doing things now that I couldn't have imagined, and that's like really incredible for me. And on the left side, like I just think there's never not a good time to shmoney dance.
Okay, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna transition into talking a little bit about your upcoming project that you're going to release.
Yeah.
Called 25 to Life.
Yeah.
You been to jail?
Never.
Okay. So talk to us about 25 to Life and where it came from, what it is, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so 25 to Life is a 5-essay project that I worked on between November of 2015 and like right now. So the backstory is 6 months after I turned 25, I found myself in this like weird space where I was just like, is this like what quarter life crisis feels like? I was just like, I don't really know what's good. Like life doesn't make sense. Like I had a new job, but I was like, man, I think I'm gonna have to quit. But like, I've never quit anything. Like, what would that maybe look like? And I also was writing through that, right? And I feel like mentally I wasn't that healthy and I didn't really tell anyone about it. Like I think in retrospect, I probably was in fact depressed, but I was also functioning at a high level. So I assume those things were mutually exclusive when they're not. They're very interdependent. So suffice to say, I would come home from work every day and I was just writing. And what came out of that were a couple series of essays. I didn't think any of them were good enough, so I hid them. But what I did do was one that I felt like was I sent to our lead editor at Blavity. It's called 16 Painful Things I Learned While Adulting. So So that was part of a larger essay question. That went out, people resonated with it. It did pretty well socially, but I kept the rest of the essays to myself. So in the past month or so, I realized it's disingenuous to tell people to be expressive and creative if I haven't made anything. So I linked with my homie Andrew, who's a photographer, and we did a series of actual pictures attached to each of these essays to capture the emotion I had about a year ago. And so it's everything from like, there's death, there's like love, there's like very, very disparate things involved there, but I think it's accurate to where I was in my life. And I think it's probably the best body of work I've written because it's the most truthful, which makes it the scariest. So I'm looking forward to that.
I just want to double back to talk about that space you were in where you were depressed. Mm-hmm. How did you even realize that you were depressed? When did you get to that place where you're like, this is not okay?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I've had my own like wrestles with that. So like in high school, I lost my short-term memory for 14 months. And so I went through a period of like anxiety, right? And that was very palpable because there's actual things that I noticed about myself and my behavior that fundamentally shifted. So because I have that base work, I was able to actually like see what I was doing and take a moment to, okay, what are your habits and why are they changing drastically? This is not the reflection of a bad day. This is not a bad feeling. This is an actual thing. And so because I have that rubric to work from, there are specific things and tactics that I can use and implement to allow myself the space to just be like, this is where I'm at, but here's how I want to actually get out of that. And so that was really helpful. I have a lot of people praying for me, so that's also an addendum. But I think it was a mixture of that, and that I just decided to get to the root of what it was and be okay that that might be an uncomfortable process, and that it's not a process that other people necessarily need to be involved in, but they are there to help me, which is what a village is for. And I have probably one of the best ones I know of, and so I leaned on them where I needed to.
So how did you get to this space where you could be so transparent, so in touch with your feelings, and you can not only communicate that with your loved ones and the people that know you, but elsewhere?
I've always been that person, right? Like, so I think the difference now is that I'm actually sharing it, but the people that have been around me when I'm home, like, and I'm just with the people that know me, like I am this. Like, this is not, this work I did sounds like me because it is. I think from a transparent point, I just felt like no one else was doing it. Like, that's the gap I see in the market. I have a lot of conversations with people who for some reason want to talk like I do, but are like, I could never do that. So I need you to keep doing what you're doing because it allows me to see myself. And so I take that really seriously when someone tells you that you're giving them space. I think the other side of it is I've never had trouble expressing myself. I just didn't know the right vehicle to which to do it. And I've found more recently that like words are a thing that I'm not randomly good at. It's something I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And because of that, I've just committed to actually trying to tell the stories that I think exist. But also there are a lot of people that I grew up around or I've seen that never got a chance to tell their story. And so like I would be doing them a tragic disservice if I didn't tell the best stories I could in the most honest way possible, using the mediums I'm trying to learn how to master. And I don't know what that looks like, but I do know that it is a part of why I'm able to do the things I do. And if it can help people, I think that matters. And I think it keeps my relationships with my close friends honest, because they know me and they know that we can have that level of conversation.
I love it. Jonathan, I speak for the audience, the people behind this camera, your entire family, mom and dad. We're so proud of you.
Thank you.
We are so proud of you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having the courage to turn your passion into a career and for walking in your purpose.
I appreciate that. Thank you for having me.
You the man.
Nah.
Now, if you guys enjoyed this interview as much as I did, I need you to let me know it. Don't be stingy. Don't be cheap. You ready? Let's get close. Let's get close. Okay, I need you to like, comment, subscribe, and then share it on your social platforms. Twitter, Facebook, you know the deal. All right? Until next time, bye.